Right. Okay. Say that. Okay, so we're continuing our conversation about the preparation for Moshiach, in particular, the preparation of Magog and Magog. Going with the opinion that Magog and Magog, which it says in many places, that Magog and Magog takes place before that it's as the advent to lead to Mashiach. So we were discussing a little bit about what it means from a historical perspective and so on. And even though l'chayda, it seems to be heipich of what the Rambam tells us. The Rambam said not to speculate. The Rambam said no one knows how it's going to be until it will be. And it's not kedai to be medaktik in these things because no one has any Kabbalah about it. And it doesn't lead to fear of God or love of God. And the Gemara famously says, Tipach atzmaisim shall chashvei kitin, that whoever calculates the kitzim when Mashiach is going to come, their bones should explode because they're causing Yidden to lose faith. Exactly. But the thing is, we were quoting from Gemaras Mufurashis. I'm going to go back to those Gemaras again. And this isn't, if it's a Gemara Sanhedrin, Dapsadik Zayin, Talmud Bavli. Gemara, it's Toidahit, Mamish Toidah Min HaShamayim. It was recorded forever. Now, there were many kitzim by the Gedolei Yisrael B'chlal. Rashi has a kates, the Rambam has a kates, the Ramban has a kates, Moli V'Gadish. And it says in the Holy Svarim that every kates was really Mamish, the energy, Mashiach was ready to come, but it didn't work out. But it expressed itself in a different way. Many times, unfortunately, expressed itself in tremendous, tremendous tragedy. You could open up a Zohar HaKadosh. It actually says Mashiach's coming in the year Tov Ches. Has a case, and guess what happened that year? The Holocaust of Eastern European Jewry, a few 100,000 Yidden were killed in the year 1648. Mamish the case that the Zohar gave. So for the Yidden, it's either a Holocaust or it's the Gula. The famous Maise in the Chabad tradition, in the year Tov Reish Ches, there was a case. And it didn't happen, so Reb Marash asked the Tzemach Tzedek, he says, what happened to the case? He says, what do you mean? Look, the Torah was printed. That wasn't good enough. So he told him, that was a positive expression. Exactly, you find different expressions. So Reb Marash famously told his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, he says, we need Mashiach L'matim Esaret Tfachim. This is a printing of the Torah. But, and I do believe that the Rebbe said that the Frierdiker Rebbe, or it's even clear maybe if you study it, but the Frierdiker Rebbe made a case of the year Tavshin Gimel, Tavshin Daled. For the Frierdiker Rebbe said the Kates Hagula, the Rebbe, the Sikha put him Memzayin. The Rebbe says that Kates from the Siddur Einu had given a Kates. Kendas Lenin, you can take it off the shelf and you can read that he gave a Kates. And Tashin Gimel, Tashin Dalet, a Kates. And we know that those weren't the best years. 1943 and 1944, it was not the best years for Klal Yisrael in Jewish history. But that's how everything is by Yidden. It's one way or the other way. But the fact is that it's a very special energy. So all those kitzim have to be studied, have to be taken. Agav, I saw Ksav Yad Kodesh, a guy writes to the Rebbe that he doesn't believe, a guy wrote to the Rebbe that someone told him that he doesn't believe in the Frierdiker Rebbe anymore. Because he was following the Frierdiker Rebbe those years, Tashin Gimel, Tashin Dalet, Gedet, Kates, and it didn't happen. So he's not. So the Rebbe says that if you don't believe in the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe listed 30 Rishonim, the Rebbe says you can't believe in Rashi, and the Rambam, and the Ramban, and everybody, because all these people who gave a Kates Agula, right? Never then, fine. But Lamer Zemas the Gemara is Gemara is for eternity. Gemara Talmud Bavli, the Gemara is Toidas Moshe Avdi, for eternity, for posterity, for this is Toidas Moshe, forever and ever. You can't learn this line of Gemara about when Mashiach's coming Kavayachol without making a Birchas HaTorah. You have to make a bracha Birchas HaTorah first. Mamash Achelik of Torah. So the first Gemara was Sanhedrin Tzadik Zayin, where he says, Toned Veliyo, the Academy of Eliyahu taught Shis Alfi Shtin Havi Alma, the world will exist for 6,000 years. 2,000 years of Toyu, of chaos, 2,000 years of Torah, and 2,000 years of Yemais HaMashiach. And like the Marsha explained, what do you mean Yemais HaMashiach? He says that that's when the Golus and the Tzaddis really began. This is about 170 years after the Churban. And he says from that, B'cholei Sizman Ro'oi Lavi Mashiach. When it says 2,000 years of Yemais HaMashiach, it means Ro'oi Mashiach is Ro'oi to come, is filling to come. V'mei Chevlei Mashiach Mikri, in the words of the Marsha. These are the days of Chevlei Mashiach. And then the Gemara concludes over there and says, Ubavini, Seinu Sherabu Yatsu Mehem Shemasha Yatsu. Because of our sins, we've lost the years that could have been Mashiach, and Mashiach hasn't come yet. And here we are still waiting. The next Gemara was also in Tzadik Zayin, Sanhedrin. Amalei Eliyahu Rav Yehuda Achud Rab Salah. Chasida Eliyahu told Rab Yehuda, the brother of Rab Salah Chasida, Ein ha'olam pachis mi pei yovelis. The world will not exist for less than 85 yovels. 50 years. And then the last one, Ben David Ba. We read the whole Gemara last time. We're not going to read it again, but the Gemara concludes and says he asked a shaila to him. Rabbi Yehuda asked back to Eliyahu. This is Eliyahu Hanavi. So he told him back. He says, "What's pshat? Does it mean Mashiach is going to come by then, or from then on I should start waiting for Mashiach? Kala or ain't it kala?" So he told Rabbi Ashi says, "This is what he told him: Ad hacha loy tistechilei mikan ve'elich tistechilei." From that point, till that point, don't anticipate his arrival. From that point on, anticipate his arrival. So it's interesting. The previous Gemara we just mentioned says that it's Ra'i Lavi Mashiach already from a few hundred years before this, already from the last 2,000 years of the world. The Yovel Pei, the 85th Yovel, is from the year 440 to the year 490 of the Common Era. Okay? So that is the period the Gemara says. So apparently there's another chalukah. There's when Mashiach is roi, it's able to come, and then you should start anticipate his coming, tistechilei, from the point that year. He asked in that yovel itself. He asked the beginning of the yovel or the end of the yovel. He says, I don't know. And finally, the final Gemara which we brought was that Shalach Rei in the same blot. Shalach Rei Reb Chanan bar Tachlifa le Reb Yosef. Reb Chanan bar Tachlifa sent to Reb Yosef. He found a Megillah written in Ashuris, and it was Ben Ginzei Reimi. It was in the hiding place of Reimi. And over there it said that Mashiach is going to come. I'm sorry. It said the following. It says that in the year Dalet Allah from Reish Tzadik Aleph Shana L'Briyas Shaleilam, 4,291 years from the Bria of the world, Ha'olam Yitin, the world will end. Then the rest of the world history is defined the following: Mehen Milchamis Taninim. There will be a section of the world history will be wars of sea monsters, meaning wars between nations, between people. Mehen Milchamis Gog and Magog. Then from a section of that world history will be the wars of Gog and Magog. Ushar Yemei Mashiach, and the rest is Yemei Mashiach. And then he says, the Eina Baruch Hu Mechadash say, Lama Yala La'achar Zayin Alaf Shana. The Eibusha doesn't renew the world until we hit the year 6,000. Rabbi Acha Breder Rava says, Rabbi Acha the son of Rava says, it wasn't like you said 4,291, it was 5,291. He says, El Achar He Alafim Shana Itmar. It's interesting to note that the Rishonim who lived closer to the year 5,000, they touched it that it means the year 5,000. But the Teres Chaim, the Abar Benel, all the other Mefarshim, they say no, it's just changing the Dalar Alafim to the Chameshas Alafim. But it means Chameshas Alafim Reish Tzadik Aleph. It means the year 1531. Which, by the way, just from Pashat Seichel is more mistaber. It makes more sense, because to change the whole gears to the whole different story is one thing. To say that everything was off. The Dalar Alafim was off, the Masayim was off, the Shloishim was off, the Achas, right? But the Gemara says, no, you have to change it. La'achar Hey Alafim Shana Itmar. It's not Dalar Alafim Reish Tzadik Aleph, rather it's Hey Alafim Reish Tzadik Aleph. So we have three chalukas that we have over here, right? We have the last 2,000 years, Yemei Mashiach. We have Eliyahu Hanavi telling Rabbi Yehuda Achud Rab Salah something about the year 490. And then we have the third Gemara, Rab Chanan bar Tachlifa to Rabbi Yosef, talking about the year 531 or 1531. Okay, so the verse is mitzvah l'kayim divrei chachamim. Yeah, it's a mitzvah to be masbir a gemara mefurashes, and especially we have hindsight 2020. We can look at history. The Gabi the word of mechashav kitzim. We're not being mechashav kitzim. It's not a word. We're not saying a year Mashiach's coming. It's coming today, this year. We know that anyways when Mashiach's coming. The word is we're taking a broad look at history, and you'll see l'ch'eda what's going on, and it's very interesting. So, firstly, what the Gemara says something about happening in the 85th Yovel is very prophetic. Right? It's a Brais Eliyahu Hanavi tells Rabbi Yehuda that Pei Yovel is why? Because what happened between the year 440 and 490? Who knows? The Roman Empire, which existed for 700 years, collapsed. Right? They collapsed. The final Roman emperor, his name was Romulus Augustulus. And he was deposed. He was overthrown. He's the last king in the year 476, right? And then there was still, it's called rump states, which means that even after like an empire collapse, like the Soviet Union, you have smaller states which still halten sich stark. They still hold on strong. So there was still a kingdom, a big kingdom of Romans. They were actually called Rex Romanurus, which means the Roman kings. It's called the kingdom of Soissons. and they were finally overthrown in the year 486. In other words, Mamish, the Gemara asks, in the beginning of the Yovel or the end of the Yovel, of the year 440 to 490, and you see Mamish at the end of the Yovel, what the Gemara describes, that from that point on, start anticipating Moshiach, right? So already you see that a world history changed that at that point. What happened? It was and it was the end of an era. You have to realize, historians, they call it classical antiquity, which means the ancient days. So they want to teach classical antiquity from the Greeks going to the Romans, and it's one period already from the year, let's say 800 before the Common Era until this point. But actually, we as Yidden know that the Greeks didn't start the Chochmah. The Mitzrim were much smarter than the Greeks. The Greeks were Mamshech. They stole wisdom from the Yidden, and they stole wisdom from previous empires. So V'meila, really, it's a hemshech of world history, coming from the Mitzrim to Ashur, to Bavel, to Paras Hamadai, to Yavon, to Roimi, and then what happens? Collapse. Right? The Roman Empire is over. It's the end of an era of literally thousands of years of building up, and we went into something called the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. Okay, the Middle Ages was absolute and total darkness in an unbelievable way, and the world went through an unbelievable shinui then, which gave birth to the modern era, right? Which we'll get to in a second. But that's called classical antiquity. What the Gemara says that Pei Hei Shana from then on is the Geula. The Begula begins now. So now. That was one Gemara, but then there was the next Gemara which spoke about the year Dalar Alofim Reish Tzadik Aleph, which is the year 531. 531. The Roman Empire collapsed decades before that. So if you study the history, it's actually very fascinating. All the historians read in that the fact is that if you study it, people used to think that immediately the Roman Empire collapsed and there was the Dark Ages. It didn't really work like that. It's not like nowadays. Communication took a little while. Right, for the barbarians to take over, the total undermining of everything. So the barbarian kingdoms, the Mediterranean economy remained intact for many decades. It was a very complex cultural transformation, and they actually give it a name. They call it late antiquity. They have a few decades period. They call it late antiquity. In other words, the ancient world continued for a meshech zman running before they ran it into the Erdarain. It takes a little time. And for some reason, the Gemara has the date 531. And how's the Gemara describe it? What are the words of the Gemara? Who remembers? The world will end. Okay? The Gemara says the world, that's a endikin. And then of preparing for the thing. Now, who took over that the ganze Melucha, essentially? In other words, the whole world moved to Europe, this whole European world that we know of, and it's called the Franks, right? The Franks, the Germanic tribes. It ended up becoming France and Germany, which is going to be Negea, because everything we're saying is going to lead into the Sikh of the Rebbe about Tzarfas, about France, and this is the Tachlis of the Geula, is Dafke in Tzarfas. The fact is, the ones who overthrew the kingdom were the Franks. That was the name what they were called. And they had a bunch of small states, but then there was one very successful king in the 490s, Clovis the First, and Gefirta Mechame. He himself was a Christian. He converted. His wife was a Catholic. She converted him in the 490s, and they made a ganze kibush. And so I was looking for if anything happened particularly that year, 531. So it is very interesting. There was a big state in the middle of them who didn't belong to the Melucha, who were more pagan, which means they belong more to the thinking of the Roman Empire. Because the Roman Empire, even though Kivayachla became Christian like a few decades before the collapse, but it didn't really become Christian until this era that all the pagan tribes, the whole world basically the whole Western world become Christian, become believers in a form of monotheism. But the vart is though that there was a kingdom called the Thuringians, and they were overthrown in the year 531 Bidiyuk, Mamish that year. They were overthrown and they came under Frankish domination, and that's what happens. So maybe that's where the Gemara is counting from Ha'ilam Yitim. But the Nechudesh B'Davar is that the new world began, and from this Tkuf on, they were ruled by the Franks. So the Franks had their dynasty of kings were mostly called Merovingians, who ended up splitting 200 years later into a different dynasty, from the same Mishpacha. Another group was called Carolingians, and this ended up becoming Germany, and this ended up becoming France. These two massive countries, and thus. Now, the Gemara says, what happens after Ha'ilam Yitim? The Gemara said that there's Milchemes Teninim, a lot of war. So again, if you start researching the ganze Tkuf of the Middle Ages, it's fascinating. Unlike all the previous Tkufas of history under Rome, there was always given Milchemes, but there was normally a state. There was a concept of a state. And in the 1500s, the concept of a state also came back. Until that point, to quote precisely the historians, they say it was decentralized elective monarchy composed of hundreds of subunits, kingdoms, principalities, counties, free imperial cities, and everyone's fighting each other, basically, and everyone's was having loyalty to different people. And this is how the Yidden lived, and how the world looked then. But it was hundreds of meluchis, and everyone was given basically de facto independence, and they gave loyalty to different people. It was the same thing when they ended up making something. They ended up calling it the Holy Roman Empire, which they, as if it started a few hundred years after the Roman Empire ended. But that's with the Pope and all of that. And this was mamish how that entire thing looked. And it was Mole V'Gadish with war, and people were so illiterate. The kings themselves didn't even know how to write their own names. Even Muhammad. And then it says that the Middle Ages also was decentralized feudal monarchy, and then France in the 1500s became increasingly centralized. The French language began to replace the other languages, and the monarch set down his absolute rule. So this is a tkufa of Zman. The Gemara goes on and says, Mehen Milchemes Teninim, Umehen Milchemes Gog Magog. This is really where we wanted to get to, Milchemes Gog Magog. We have to figure out what Gog Magog is, and the Chayres Kum Tachais. So there's two efanim you could say in the Gemara. The Gemara said that the Gemara said two gersais, two people said different things. Is it the year 531 or 1531? Yeah? So the Pashas Kamenzagin, the best eifin to say from a historical perspective, if we're looking backwards from the year Tafshan Ayin Tes, is Elu Vela Divrei Kim Chaim. Elu Vela Divrei Kim Chaim. The Gemara itself says that there's two tkufas. There's a tkuf Mehen Milchemes Teninim, and Mehen Milchemes Gog Magog. So Kamenzagin, Ha'ilam Yitain in 531. The Nach is given 1,000 years of Milchemes Teninim. The Nach is given Mehen Milchemes Gog Magog, V'Hashar Yemais HaMashiach. We'll see in a second what Gog Magog is. Gog Magog, essentially, according to the Tzemach Tzedek, according to Chassidus, and according to the Midrashim, is total kfir in the Eibishter. It's chidev v'gidev klapi maila, worse than Avodah Zarah. It's unlike Avodah Zarah, and it's definitely not like shittif. It's chidev v'gidev. It denies the Eibishter. It's enlightenment. It's emancipation. It's freedom from God. Okay, so that's the Geder Hadvarim. So if you try researching and seeing when did the enlightenment begin. Everyone has different cheshbonis. Many people say it began when Christianity had its Reformation, which means people stopped believing in the Catholic Church, and they said that everyone could read themselves their own Bible and figure out what it is. Martin Luther, Yimach Shemoy, he began the Reformation in the year 521, and it's interessant that so if you count from the year 15, in the year 1521, he made the Reformation. So many people count from that tkufa. So the Gemara speaks about the year 1531. Hey Allah from Neish Tzaddik Aleph. And that's actually the year many people were influenced by the Reformation. By the way, most of Americans are not Catholics. They belong to the Reformation, the free thinkers, Kavayachol. They call themselves Lutherans because after Martin Luther was the name of the guy who did it. But the vart is that there was an alliance made between the princes of Europe in the year 1530. There was one made in 1526, but it was unsuccessful because there was no military backing behind the alliance. Without a military backing, it doesn't mean anything. But all the princes, tons of princes got together and they made an alliance in the year 1531, mamish that year, basically to replace the church. They wanted to replace the Holy Roman Empire, like it was called, and even though they were defeated a few decades later by a king, but it was too late already. And at that point, the king, there was too much established, this whole movement, and they made a rule which stands till today in Western countries, in Latin called cugus regio eius, religio, which means wherever your realm is, that's your religion. In other words, freedom of religion. Freedom of religion. You get to, however you think, whoever's the king in their area, that's how the religion follows. And that's what happened in the year 1531. Another eifin you could say where the Enlightenment began in the year 1531 is that other people counted from the big scientists who were coming out and Ersh with their discoveries. A guy named Nicholas Copernicus, you may have heard of him. He's the one who decided that the world is that the world is round and everything's surrounding the earth. And a big scientist. He wrote a big book. There was a lot of universities then coming out with big things, and he printed his book. He was like the guy who came before Galileo and Newton, for those here who know historical history. But it is the Grace mention who were thinking on their own and coming up with discoveries. So basically, he came up with his ganze thesis, this Copernicus, in the year 1514, and then he ended up writing his book over the next 15 years. And they say he finished his book in the year 1532. Okay, and the Gemara Retveg in the year 1531. So the historians will sagen, they want to say that they want to count the Enlightenment began in the year 1542. Okay, so we're pretty close. The word is azoi. Now, what is Sanche? What is Mochames Gog Magog? The Gemara says Mehen Mochames Tinim Mehen Mochames Gog Magog. So the Tzemach Tzedek is Masber. He brings a medrash. The medrash says, and we quoted it last week. We says the Gog Magog, without quoting the whole medrash, the Gog Magog says Lo Asid Lavi Asid Loimar Shoitim Hayu Rishonim Zok the Gemara. Gog Magog vet sagen that Shoitim Hayu Rishonim, that the first people who fought the Yidden were Shaitim. Why were they Shaitim? So you must ask him, they were fighting the Yidden. They said that's the wrong way to fight the Yidden, Zok Gog Magog. Loi Hayu Yidden, they didn't realize it's Fran Eibishter in Himmel. Ani Eini Oisakain, Zokter. I am not going to do that. Ella Harenim is Davig and Patrein Chila. I'm fighting with the Eibishter. I'm bringing the fight straight to God. That's the best way to fight the Yidden, is to fight with God, not to fight with the Yidden. And then I'll deal with the Yidden. From this comes again a lot of persecution against Yidden. From anti-God comes anti-Jews. Kiyadua for the last few hundred years. But he says, and the Medrash finishes, Hado d'chsiv yisyatzu malcheretz al Hashem ve'al Mashiachoi. That Gog Magog comes to fit Muhammad against the Eibusher and against his Mashiach. Zok the Rebbe the Tzemach Tzedek. Zok there, the Sanchedev is the same klippe. Sanchedev and Gog Magog are the same klippe. Sanchedev was moided and amitas achdus yizbarich be yoiser mikol evdei kechav mazolis, more than all the evdei kechav mazolis. Sanchedev. He said, he quotes Psukim, chidef v'gidev be yoiser lahachish belikim chayim she'ein elikad elikaya, to deny the living God, that he's not elikad elikaya. Sanchedev made himself a god. And he says, "Klipa kasher kizuk meisanchedev lehoyadayim b'chol malchei v'sariyed dichavim u'mazolis k'meisanchedev." It never existed before that, and he says that that's the same klipa as Gog Magog. Be'etzim, this shaychus between Sanchedev and Gog Magog is in Feidish Gemara. The Gemara says that the Eibusher wanted to make Chizkiyo Amelech Moshiach, and Sanchedev Gog Magog. Sanchedev wasn't a random guy. Sanchedev represented mamish the same klipa of Amalek. In fact, the Gemara went on to say that the amount of people in his machne was a massive amount, and it says, Kein Asidin Lavayim Gog Magog, the Gemara says. This is the same amount of people who are going to come with Gog and Magog. Just for fun, last week we made a cheshbon that the Gemara says how many people he had, and the Gemara says 2.6 billion. It's exactly the amount the Gemara says. And we pointed out that the amount of people in the world today whose hearts and minds are captured by Western ideals of emancipation and human liberty and freedom and all the other ideals of the Western world is approximately 2.6 billion people. So that was just for fun. We threw that idea out there. But now, to bring it home, the Rebbe's Masber in a famous Sikha in Chelech Hafala, very kedai for everyone to learn B'chal in life, and the Rebbe's Masber that there's three Eifanim of Klippe of fighting the Eibishter. There's the Eifen of Bilam, there's the Eifen of Parei, and there's the Eifen of Sanchedev. And the Rebbe says that Bilam is Shittuf, meaning he believes in the Eibishter. But he also has, he believes in Shittuf. He's not completely bottled to the Eibishter. He has a struggle with his own Yeshus, and believing that there's any independence outside of Hashem. Shittuf, that's Bilam. Lo yuchal lavres pi Hashem. I can't go against the word of God, said Bilam. Bilam Harasha. Then there's Parei. Parei is an Eved Avodah Zarah Kipshutei. Right? He believed in God. He says Hashem is the Eibishter, but he's not my God. I have a different God. He's not Ozav Havayis Haaretz. Eibishter is not running the world. Other forces are running the world. He believes in nature. He believes in the Nilus, in the Nile. He believes in himself. That's the Klippa Pari. And then comes Sanchedev, the Rebbe's Masber, who denies the whole Metzias of Elikus. Chidif v'gidif ein elikad elikai. He says the Eibishter is nicht the Eibishter. That's Sanchedev. The Rebbe in that Sich is Masber that who's the worst Klippa of them all? Pari. The Rebbe says you can't get worse than Parei, because Parei, Mamash doesn't care about the Eibishter. It's not relevant to his life. He's an Eved Avodah Zarah. The Eibishter is not. Sanchedev, the fact that he's fighting Hashem Chidiv v'gidiv, and he has to say there's no Eibishter, that means he's dealing with the Eibishter. He has a relationship with the Eibishter. He's fighting the Eibishter, fine. He's not the worst klippa, right? So that's what we were matzia last week, that this vart, that the tkufas that we spoke about are actually the three klippas that Rebbe speaks about. That until the tkuf of the end of the world history, so to speak, ha'olam yitim, the end of the Roman Empire, was the tkuf of Avodah Zarah, thousands of years, and it was a very shveta klippa for the Yidden to break. Mamish, for us to break into their society, that they should mamish take the ideals of Yiddishkeit seriously, of the Tanakh, of the idea of the Eibishter, that the Eibishter wants this from you and that from you, and all those concepts. It was mamish a clip of Avodah Zarah, and it was so foreign. They used to laugh. If you look at the Roman emperors, the conversations with the Yidden, very fascinating. They used to laugh at them. They used to say that you guys believe in an invisible God, or they used to even say sometimes you guys don't believe in God, because for them God was only a tangible, physical, gashmias. There was mamish. It was as if there was no effect for the most part on the Avodah Zarah. That's what they were. They were Avodah Zarah. But then the world became obsessed with God and became very, very Christian and became very, very obsessed with ideas of schad and einish and right and wrong and yeshes versus bittul and all these concepts. And that was the next kuf of the world. There's no question about it. The Middle Ages, obsession with religion, obsession with God. Definitely shituf, which is the klippa of what? After we have Pari, the klippa of Bilam. And then you have the klippa of Goygu Magog, Zakta Gemara. Umehen Goygu Magog. What's Goygu Magog? Goygu Magog is the klippa of Sanchedev, the klippa of Chidiv V'Gidiv Klapi Maila. They're closer to the Eibishter than the old pagans, because first there's a recognition of God. People are fighting God. They feel they have to fight God. Right? At the end of the day, you can't. There's no one. The genie's out of the bottle. God is part of a consciousness of the world, and there's a mochama on kegen the Eibishter. And that's that final klippa, and the Gemara says this leads to Yemais HaMashiach. This brings us now to the final portion of the shir, which is the Rabbeim's deal with Tzarfas, with friends. So the Vart Zazoi, the Rabbeim, you have to realize, the Alter Rebbe hated Napoleon with every fiber of his being and every bone in his body. Kipshutei mamish. This is I have over here the letter of the Mittler Rebbe says about him. First of all, he says Oisei Ha'ish Napoleon Yamach Shemoy. That's Oisei Ha'ish. Verstehst du Ma'aseh? People study history, they think Napoleon's a cool guy. I mean, by the Rebbe, he was Mamish Oisei Ha'ish Hatzoyred V'Reitziach HaKloli. And he says about the Alter Rebbe on Napoleon, Tachlis Sinis and Esav. He hated him with the Tachlis Hasinah you could have, and he writes Ki Hu Hasatan. Because he is the very Satan Alein Haminagid B'chol Hasnagadus of Ra to Toiv, and fine. And he talks about what his klippa was. He says his klippa was La'abid Nefashes Le'ein Mispar Bli Argasha Klal Klal, a massive murderer, Eitzeach HaKlali, whatever. And then he says V'habeis, the Mittler Rebbe writes this in the letter, famous letter. It's printed in Beis Rebbe. V'habeis hageyus v'hahisnasus, his geyus, his lifting himself, his nasus, litlois v'lismeich al koicho yigvurasi, to litlois, to hang on and to be soimech on his own koich and gvura, ba'oitzim ha'chochme, chulu v'gam ba'oitzim hatzlachasi, in the brilliance of his success. Al zeh nichtav, and this it says in the pasuk, Tagbia kanesh, you lift yourself up like an eagle. He says, ubesanche, and like by Sanchedev, where it says Kiyan ki Gaved, he lifts himself loymar koichi ba'etzim yadi umisale kahashkacha, he removes the hashkacha ve'emunna ubitachin belikim, and that's the letter of the Mittler Rebbe, and the famous letter of the Alter Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe wrote to the Moshe Meislish. And I think the background of the letter is that Moshe Meislish, of course, was spying for the Alter Rebbe against Napoleon, and I think that Moshe Meislish wrote to the Alter Rebbe that he doesn't think he's such a bad guy. He's with him. Meaning but he doesn't see the oitzim evil. So the Alter Rebbe writes a very short letter to him, very interesting letter. And the Alter Rebbe writes over there, he says, Chei Hashem v'chei nafshi. It's printed in the Ignis of the Alter Rebbe. He says, by the life of God and in other words, he's making a shvua. Kachid unili b'musaf b'yem al Rishon. This is what they showed me, Momaila, on Musaf of the first day of Rosh Hashanah. This would be in the year Tov Kufayin Gimel, 1812. She says, "Be'im sheyenatzer Bonaparte." This is what he writes. That if Bonaparte is going to win the war, Yudam Keren Yisrael, the Keren Yisrael will be uplifted. V'yurbe ha'isher b'Yisrael, and the wealth of the Yidden will be uplifted. Avol yisparku v'yisnatku liban sheyisrael me'avim shemaim. The Yidden's hearts will be totally removed from the Eibishter. Ubim sheyenatzech Alexander, but if Alexander, the Tsar wins, Yushpal Keren Yisrael, the Yidden will be Yushpal Take. V'yurba ha'ini b'Yisrael, Yidden will be poverty stricken. Avol yisangu v'yiskashru v'yischabru liban sheyisrael avim shebashamayim. The Yidden will be connected with the Eibishter. And then he gave him the ha'is that to know that what he's telling him is true, that he's going to pass away soon, and that they're going to start a gzeira of kantanistan. So the Alter Rebbe even knew the consequences of his actions, the czar, the evil czar, and so on. But the Alter Rebbe preferred the ruchnius of it all. Now, so this is the klipa of Tzarfas. And Ad Kedei Kach, by the way, that this is B'derech HaTeva, the Mittler Rebbe writes, this is what killed the Alter Rebbe. In other words, he was Meiser Nefesh for this Muhammad. And Mittler Rebbe writes in the letter that B'pnei Goydel HaMerirus Ho'atzuma, because of his Goydel of Merirus, Be'amkus Gedoyle Midei Shah Kilkel HaMara. He ruined his mother, his gal, because of his unbelievable Merirus against Bonaparte, against Tzarfas. Now, the Rebbe Rashab in Simchas Teda Tafresh Ayin Vav, the Rebbe brings it in the Sikha in Parashat Vayeshev Nun Beis, where he speaks about Tzarfas, a whole Sikha devoted to France. So in Simchas Teda Ayin Vav, the Rebbe Rashab hat gesagt the following words. He says, "Choifish begashmias is choifish eichet in ruchnias." Freedom and emancipation in Gashmis is also emancipation, choifish, freedom beruchnius. And he says, "Min zetas bemuchash from." And where's this raya? I believe it's printed in Teda Shalom. It's Simchas Teda Ayin Vav. He says, "Min zetas bechush from Frankreich and America." He says, you see this bemuchash from France and from America. So it's interesting because people want to be mechalik between the French Revolution and the American Revolution. So Ken Gur Zayin, I do believe that the founders of America were God-fearing people. And they weren't like the French revolutionaries in the 1780s. However, Pasha B'derech HaMelech comes out of all the choifish, B'derech HaMelech, the klipa of Tzarfas, because that's what Rebbe Rashab said, the klipa of Tzarfas and Das. So the Rebbe read in the Sikha, now just to give 2-3 minutes, we're already over time, but just to give 2-3 minutes to the Rebbe's Sikha, the Rebbe speaks over there how the Yidden go to every place to be mevarer, every country, that they use the customs of that country and they utilize the country to lift up the sparks, and this is how we bring the Geula. So the Rebbe says that there is a way that you could that you transform the place itself, that the place itself becomes a source of Torah. It's not like it needs an outside source to illuminate it and so on. It itself becomes the makar of Torah to the rest of the world. So the Rebbe says, al pizeh, we see the uftu, the chiddush of our generations over the previous generations. Why we have a special shaykhus to this whole thing, because we see we're mamish established centers in every country in the world, and we're all over the place. And the Rebbe says everything in the world is in general, and then bepratus, it really brought out somewhere in particular. And the Rebbe says Tzarfas is the prime example. The Rebbe says we know the Rabbeim's yachas to Tzarfas. And fine. And the Rebbe says the following. The Rebbe says Kiyadua b'divrei hayamim, that the Französische Revolution b'shnas Tovkuf Memtes, that the French Revolution in the year 1789, which so he says is an ideologische mapeche. It was an ideological mapeche. These are the ideas of emancipation, the ideas of the Enlightenment being implemented in reality, in the world. That's what emancipation was, freedom from das. The Rebbe said it was an inyan klali, it was a general thing. Was hat mit sich mitgebracht a shinui ikri in der ganze Welt. They made a shinui ikri in the whole world. Und sie ist gewähnt für die Bereus ha-ikrios, a welches ist gewähnt aufgebaut geworden, die Yesodis Hanhaga von der moderne Welt. This is the foundations upon which it was built, the entire modern world on culture, ad hayem hazeh, culture to this very day. And fine. So the Rebbe says that besides all the good that it brought Yidashidus and Chedus, which is a positive thing, but it also brought with itself a Zugang from Chofish Beruchnis, a spiritual freedom, Chofish from religion, from Prikasel, Hefkedis, to the time afterward. So, the Rebbe went on to say that the Rabbeim had a very interesting yachas with Tzarfas. Bechlal, they weren't misyachis with it so much. Starting from the Rebbe Maharash, they began to be misyachis. The Rebbe Maharash is the first one who used to do trips outside of Russia, and he went to France a bunch of times. And the Rebbe Maharash spoke French, and he spoke German, and he spoke Italian. And the Rebbe Maharash went with a trip to the Rebbe Rashab to France. The Rebbe brings, and they had a conversation in French for 4 hours. And the Rebbe Maharash, of course, had the famous story that the Rebbe tells over that he went to the hotel there and he saved that guy, younger man, Yain Nesach, is mitamtim, don't drink the Yain Nesach. The Rebbe Maharash began, then the Rebbe Rashab went there a lot. But the Rebbe says, when did we go there? Bekvias Lubavitch, by the Friedrich Rebbe, when he sent his Bnei Bayis, i.e. the Lubavitch Rebbe, our Rebbe, and he went there, Bekvias, and he was producing Torah there, and he learned there. And the Rebbe even has a ha'ara where he says, where he has a quote from the Rebbetzin in the Ha'ara. Ha'ara 43, a Mugad Gesicha. Lahar Midivrei had Abanis Hatzitkanis, that she told the Shluchis of Medina Sarfas, Mir haben geackert und gesät und ihr darf schneiden. That we plowed and sowed, and you guys are reaping the benefits now. And the Rebbe says basically that now you see B'muchash, the Eibishter brought Hashgacha Pratis recently. Basically, Yidden moved there after the war, and the Moroccan Jews and Lubavitch set up shop, and there were Temchat Mim, and the Rebbe says that, and we'll conclude with this. The Rebbe says 770 is begun Atriyat Tzarfas, that it brings out the whole Nekuda, and so the Rebbe says that why are we mentioning it now? So the Rebbe says first of all you have to be Pesumei Nisa, but then V'oid V'hu Ha'ikr. The Rebbe says that the Hakara V'hidah, the thanking to Hashem, is in Ikri. The reason why Moshiach didn't come by the time of Sancheriv and Chizkiyo, the Gemara says, is because Chizkiyo didn't say Shira. He didn't thank Hashem for what happened. So the Rebbe says we have to thank the Eivishter. We have to recognize what happened here. That the very klippa, the oimik klippa of Sancheriv, of freedom, of democracy, we basically use democracy against itself, Kvayachol, to make this, to transform it, that we are now the ultimate source of Kedusha, that America becomes the source of Kedusha, and France becomes the source of Kedusha. And the Rebbe says the fact that this transformation took place, we have to thank the Eibusha, and this is totally the Geula, that we recognize the world we're living in now, and the transformation, the way we won the war, or the way we're going to win the war, and I think that the Rebbe sounds like we did win the war, and just to conclude with the Geshmak of Vart, the Rebbe says in the Sikha, it's a beautiful sikh. You shall learn it by Yeshiv Tafshin Obeis. The Rebbe says that we took the national anthem of France and made it a niggin. Simchas Torah Tafshin Lamed Dalet. And the Rebbe says, very interesting. That was the national anthem since the year 1792. The moment we took it, Simchas Torah Tafshin Lamed Dalet, Simchas Torah 1973. He said a few months later, the French government voted, and the country voted that it shouldn't be the national anthem anymore. They chose a different national anthem. They bring in the Ha'ara Stam that they changed it back a few years later. Maybe they didn't like the new one. Whatever. In the 80s, they changed it back. But the Rebbe says, Anes, the Rebbe says, why they changed it? Because the Sar Lamaila saw as Gevan Achsid Shenigin. It's Kedusha. The Rebbe says, so much so that people sing it, they don't even know that it's the French national anthem. And there's Mamash and Nigin that we get inspiration from, and we dance with, and we have Chassidish of Habrangans with. And the Rebbe says this Mamash brings down. The Rebbe says that you see the miracles. If people would just open their eyes, they would see the Afin and Nissim happening in our times. So, Kenti Yalana, we should have the Geula and Dida Notzach and Yemaisam Sheikh B'Chara Mamash.